Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining. My name is Joan King, and I am a consultant with the National Council for Behavioral Health. And I am honored to be with all of you this afternoon as we talk about finding what I've called finding a place of calm in the storm. And I want to just explain a little bit about sort of where my perspective comes from and a little bit about my work, just so that people are aware of kind of the context out of which I speak. So I work, the National Council for Behavioral Health is the member organization for behavioral health providers, both on in mental health and in addiction across the country, as well as other healthcare organizations. And in that role, I do a lot of consulting, both with behavioral health organizations, but also with primary care practices, with hospitals, with community groups who are all, kind of living through this same storm. And so I have an opportunity to speak with people pretty much all day, every day about what their experiences are, and also have had the privilege, and I do count this a privilege, to be able to come alongside people through the virtual format that we are living in now, to try to provide some resources around, kind of broadly self-care, but hopefully some targeted resources that can really help you kind of maintain your well-being in the midst of a very, very difficult time. So what I hope we can do today is I'm going to start out with a couple polls, because I would like to just, it's difficult for me. I do a lot of work now virtually, but a lot of it I can at least see people, or I have an active chat box. I can't do that today. So I wanted to at least get a little bit of a read in two different ways on where you are. And so I want to do that first. And then we're going to talk about anxiety in a time of COVID. And I want to just talk a little bit about the physiology of anxiety, and also then some strategies. We're going to talk through some strategies around keeping your perspective, around mind, body, and connection strategies. And then we'll close with some final thoughts. So that's really the agenda for today. I would say that Tara is monitoring the questions, and she will forward them to me. So if at any point you have a question or a comment, a suggestion, please feel free to put that in the question box, and I will be monitoring that throughout so that we can have a little bit more of a live conversation. I find that that's really helpful around engagement, and I really want to be able to target this content to your particular needs. So I did identify some learning objectives, and part of, I think, having perspective is to kind of pull back and take a view of what are the challenges that we're all confronting. And then we'll talk about a whole variety of different coping mechanisms that I and my colleagues have found. I've done some, a lot of research in this in the last 10 months, as I've been working remotely since March 10th. And really have given this a lot of thought. And then I'm hoping at the end that one of the outcomes of this conversation is that you will commit to at least potentially one additional self-care strategy a day that will help you as you move through the day. So the first poll I would like to do is to just get a read on where are you today? And I'm specifically asking about today, because as I talk to folks, what I find is how we are varies not only from day to day, but sometimes from hour to hour. So the poll is open. So if you could just respond to one of these options, and I know it's probably more than one, but I only gave you the option, sort of a forced choice. And Tara, since you're managing the poll, I'll let you decide when to close it. Okay, Tara, I can't see the
Can you see
poll
the poll?
results.
Okay, I can read them to you, Joan.
Okay,
So
great.
the question is, where are you today? So 20% said I feel pretty good. 40% says I am mostly managing. 10% I am worried about what's going to happen next. 20% I keep working at putting one foot in front of the other. And 10% I'm having a hard time keeping my head above water.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Tara. So 20% of you are having a relatively good day, 40% mostly managing, 10% worried about what's going to happen next. And that worry could be on a lot of different fronts, and we'll talk about some of that. And then the 20% of you are just kind of putting one foot in front of the other. Man, that is, some days that's really the best you can do. And I say that's great. And then for the 10% of you who are having a hard time keeping your head above water, I'm hoping that we can provide some options for you, some hope, not that we can fix the context in which you're living. So the second poll is really about, it's just to give me a little bit of framework in terms of what would be most helpful for you in our time together. So I'm saying, I wonder, and these are the things that probably, maybe in the dark of the night you ask yourself. I don't know about you, but I certainly have had periods of time in the last 10 months when sleep has been relatively elusive. But I wonder how to keep moving forward, or how to build better coping skills, or manage my anxiety, or maybe, the thing you're wondering about most is how to support the people around you that you care about.
Joan, I'll keep it open for another 20 seconds.
Okay, great.
Still have responses coming in. Okay, so the results of the I Wonder poll: 11% how to keep moving forward, 23% how to build better coping skills, 32% how to manage my anxiety, and 34% how to support those around me.
Okay, great. Thank you. That is really helpful for me, and I think we will hopefully cover all of those as we move forward throughout the time. So one of the things I want to try to do at a couple, actually 3 different points through our time together today, is actually do some concrete work with you. So one of the things that we've, as a consulting team at the National Council, have committed ourselves to as we do this work is, before we do any kind of training like this, we actually are taking people through a brief grounding activity to help you calm yourself and focus your thinking so that you can be fully present for the next hour we have together. One of the physiological impacts of the time we're living in is that for most of us, especially those of us who work in and around healthcare, I think our fight, flight, freeze system is activated on a constant basis. And so, we have a lot of stress hormones fluctuating through our bodies at different points in time. And at different points in time, the frontal part of our brain, the part that controls our executive function, our cognitive thinking, our decision making, is not really in control because our body is perceiving threat. So all the activities we'll do today are going to be to try to calm the back part of your brain and bring you to a different mental and even physical state. So and again, nothing scary here, nothing too far out there woo-woo, but I'd invite you just to put your feet flat on the floor, and to, if you're at a standing desk, feel free to get yourself into a comfortable standing position. At a sitting desk, to sit comfortably. And if you're at a place where you feel safe to do this, feel free to close your eyes. If not, please feel free to use this picture as a focal point. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take you through a guided meditation using this picture. So if you could just begin to focus on your breath and the rhythm of your breath in and out, in and out. And then I'd invite you in your mind's eye to put yourself on the edge of this lake. This is Flathead Lake in Montana. It's a very special place to me. And I'd invite you, first of all, just to feel the environment you're in. So to feel the stones, the rounded stones underneath your feet, and how good they feel. To feel the warmth of the sun on your head, on your face, on your chest, just comforting you, warming you, with that warmth spreading through your body. And feel the gentle touch of the breeze blowing across your skin. Not a heavy wind, just a gentle summer breeze floating across your skin and carrying the scent of pine, the scent of water, and as you continue to feel the stones, the sun, the air, and to smell the water, the pine, maybe even the dirt, I'd invite you to listen in your mind's eye to the sound of that breeze that you're feeling across your skin, but also that's blowing around your ears. And then to also listen to the sound of the water lapping on the shore. It's a gentle tap, tap, tap sound. And as you feel and smell and listen, notice the stillness that you have created in your body and the deepening of your breath. And use that breath now to mark that sensation of stillness, of warmth, of calm in your mind's eye with your visual of the water, the trees, the sky, the clouds, and the mountains. Knowing that as you bring your awareness back to the present moment, you can keep that image inside you and return to it at any point in time. And I'd invite you now to take 2 really deep breaths, and when you're ready, return to the present with a commitment to allow yourself to set aside the cares of this day and just focus for the rest of our time together. Thank you. I find, and again, I want to try to introduce a variety of tools to you. I find that the locking in imagery into our brains with a fully sensory experience can be really helpful, because in the night you can't sleep, you can return to that image and bring the breath with it. You know, if you're in the middle of a really stressful day, you could just take 2 minutes. I want to be practical. You are, I'm assuming, busy people. And so really want to kind of keep some really realistic kind of strategies here as we go through this time. So, anxiety has been, I just was reading yesterday another study that came out that over 50, now 50% of the population is reporting a decline in mental health as a result of the current pandemic. And anxiety is a hallmark of that. And so I want to think about anxiety with you a little bit, because the reality is that anxiety is a normal response to a stressful situation. It's a biological response to stress, because anxiety at its base, in its sort of functional state, helps us prepare to handle stress. It helps us prepare to run. It helps us prepare to fight, if you want to think about it that way. It's a biological response to threat. The challenge for most of us is that, if the threat is a space and time threat, something that will resolve itself quickly, then the biological kind of part of anxiety, what we end up feeling is anxious. But what's really going on is we have adrenaline and we're prepared to run, but we're not running, and we can't run away from the current situation, which is why anxiety is such a presenting issue for so many people. So I want to talk a little bit about what it is that we are perceiving as anxiety, as threat right now, at the biological level, sometimes at the psychological level. And I want to talk about both external and internal features. So when we think about the external features, we are wired to create sense, to create meaning out of chaos, to create order out of chaos. And over the last 10 months, we have all lived through conflicting information. And many of you on this call may be you may all have different perspectives. And one of the things that I find pretty universally with the healthcare workers I'm working with, and I count you as that, because your role in terms of surveying nursing homes and trying to, I know support doesn't, they may not always feel your support, but you're really at a critical juncture in terms of creating safety for very vulnerable groups of people. So that's why I count you as part of healthcare. When you're in healthcare and you're seeing on a daily basis or hearing on a daily basis the impact of COVID, and I think about nursing homes, long-term care facilities, and the amount of death and illness that they've needed to manage over the last 10 months, the staff who've been sick, who potentially may have long-term health consequences. And yet we live in a culture where there are many people who continue to say this isn't real, or this isn't any worse than the flu. And so there's this cognitive discrepancy for those of us who work in healthcare. And we carry that day in and day out. And in some cases, it really sets up what we call moral injury, which is that discrepancy between what we know to be true, what we're being told, and what we're being asked to do. And there's a conflict there. We've been through, I guess, are still in really a very conflictual election cycle with a lot of strong feelings on all sides that, comes into us. It comes in through the news. It comes in through, our conversations with other people. And then, the whole experience of the last 10 months have caused all of us to have a deeper focus where, again, wherever you come out on this, on racial injustice, we've all been hit right between the eyes with issues of health equity and income inequality, and the income hits. So those are kind of the things that are what I call, they're the noise around us, okay? They're real, it's there, and sometimes we don't even realize that we're tuned into it, but it's a feature of what's driving our anxiety, because as it comes at us, our brains are responding to threat. And then the internal features, I think that most people are confronting, at least as I hear them, are, first of all, I want to just talk a little bit about cognitive overload, which has been a really helpful concept to me over the past several weeks, since this phrase kind of crossed over my email through a colleague of mine. when I do training for staff, one of the things I talk about is, about 90 to 95% of what we do every day is habit. And the pandemic has completely upended our habits, okay? At the basic level of, yesterday we realized that we were out of butter. And right now we're not going to grocery stores because we're in a high quarantine period. And so, 10 months ago, we ran out of butter. I would have gotten in the car, driven 5 minutes to the grocery store, gotten butter, everything would be resolved. Just as a simple example, at the very basic level, most of you have had your work life upended. All of your, you get up at a certain time, you have a routine before you leave for work, you get dressed, you go, you all traveled for work, you had routines around travel. I'm assuming that, like me, many of you loved travel, so there's loss there. But all of that shifting in habit really does overload our brains. We have limited capacity to change behavior, and we've all been asked to do that over and over and over again. So that when you find yourself not being able to focus, not being able to get your to-do list done, not sure what to do next, walking to the kitchen and then not being able to remember why you got there, know that that is a normal response to the situation we're living in. You're not losing your brains. It's a normal response, and it comes out of this idea of cognitive overload. And as we've talked about, this idea of brain-body chemistry, that our bodies are actually on higher alert. We carry internally, and everyone, I always say, we're in the same, this was a phrase that came to me early on and was so incredibly helpful to me, that we're all in the same storm, but we're in different boats. So for some of us, you're every day are confronting the chance of being infected. Many of you on this call probably have had people in your lives who have had COVID. Maybe you've lost people to COVID. So this idea of illness being kind of all around us, our cleaning lady was here yesterday, and, from our 12-foot distance with our masks on, she said to me, I've known now 3 people who've died of COVID, right? It's all around us. Job security, economic worry, the loss of our normal resilience building strategies. I went finally for dental care about a month ago, and I was in the dentist's office waiting for the dentist to come in. Everybody's in PPE, and I heard laughter from across the hall. The dentist and the hygienist and the person in the chair were all kind of joking with each other. And I honestly sort of jerked like this and thought, what is that sound? And then I realized, it's normal human interaction that all of us took for granted. It happened all day, every day. I had contact with colleagues. For those of you who travel, you talk to people in the airport or on a plane or on a train, right? All of that built our resilience, the ability to go to the gym, the ability to just take a day and do whatever you do with your friends. All of that has shifted for most of us. Now, some areas of the country, more freedom. I don't want to call it freedom. More, there's more normal activity than others, but the reality is most of us are facing less activity all the time. That all builds our normal resilience. There's no loneliness going on. There's isolation. And then you have unique stressors. Your work in surveying and, still needing to hold long-term care facilities and nursing homes that have really stressed and overwhelmed staff accountable, trying to help them now with, I'm making this up. I've spent a lot of time over the last week or so trying to imagine myself into your worlds, but having to hold people accountable, helping them with their infection control processes, all of those kinds of things. These are all the internal factors that have impacted all of us, and that drive this feeling of anxiety or this feeling of being out of control. And then again, we've got all of these things. I just wanted to kind of highlight these because they come down to the personal level. The fear and worry about our own health and the health of loved ones. Again, changes in sleep patterns. I've talked to so many people who are struggling with sleep. Worsening of any other kinds of underlying issues that we've had, and an increased use of other kinds of coping strategies that may not be the best. I work a lot in Montana, and alcohol sales in Montana have just skyrocketed. That's been true across the country. So how we've kind of laid out what the challenges are, hopefully trying to, I think it's really helpful to make explicit what is implicit in our lives so that we can kind of take it out and look at it and say, oh, so maybe it is normal for me to respond the way that I am. So we're going to walk through some strategies that I hope, some of these will help some of you, some of them will help others. If it doesn't work for you, if it doesn't land, just let it go. And please understand that there is absolutely no judgment in anything I'm saying. I've, on one of the self-care webinars, the national webinars we did, someone put in the chat box, I feel so guilty because I can't focus on any of these things. So I want to create a judgment-free zone here for the next hour or so together. And just know that I'm trying to help you build your toolbox, okay? Knowing that it takes a lot of different tools. Most of us have really had to identify some different tools and kind of hone our skills over the last number of months. So we're going to talk about kind of perspective building and honoring your own experience first. We're going to talk about some concrete strategies for body and mind. We're going to talk about some other resilience building strategies, and then I want to wrap up with four kind of final thoughts. So let's first really dive into this idea of perspective building. And, we've done some of this by talking about external and internal factors. So that's kind of the context in which we're existing. But I really want to hone in here on sort of how we think about the situation we currently find ourselves in. So I think early on, it's interesting because, and I'm making an assumption that some of you lived a little bit like I did. Before the pandemic hit, I traveled about 65% of the time. My home airport is Philadelphia, and when I got there on a Monday morning, it was not uncommon for the Delta agent to recognize me and say, oh, where are you headed to this week, right? And but in between traveling, I also worked at home. And so it wasn't like I had to set up a new office or figure out, kind of the mechanics of working at home. I kind of knew that. But it was different, and it was so different. And it was several weeks before I could kind of think, oh, this is really different. And it was really helpful for me when someone shared this quote with me, that you're not working from home, which is what I'd always done before. You're at home during a crisis trying to work. It's a small shift in perspective. I'm just using it as an example. Again, that may not land with you, but it really landed with me because it was this recognition that, working from home was not an interlude now between travel. It was a current state. And it meant I had to rethink all of the ways I relate to people and support people and push people. And then the other one that has been really helpful to me is, this other one about kind of what's on people's plates, and that we all have different kinds of plates. We all have different things on our plates. I was talking to some of the folks I work with in Montana, all of whom from different hospitals in the state. They're all on the incident command teams. So they're all frontline. They're working, trying to figure out staffing and coverage and, hospital beds with COVID. That's a different plate than mine. There are stressors in my life, but not those. So really recognizing that it's important for us from perspective standpoint to look at what is on your plate and how strong is your plate. And there have been points where my plate was paper and it felt like it was gonna kind of crumple. And then thinking about some really important perspective building things. And again, none of this is rocket science. This is stuff that we all sort of know at some point, but I want to underscore it. For me, I've really needed to work both in my own life and with the teams I'm working with to really do that work of saying, okay, what's within my control and what's outside of my control, okay? And under normal circumstances, right, when you're feeling stressed, you can kind of talk to yourself and say, well, it's not really that bad. And the reality is that we have a lot of choice in our situations, and there are things that are out of our control. And so for me, part of perspective is recognizing what's within my control and what's out of my control. The second thing, and I'm going to make an assumption here about those of you who are listening, because of the kind of work you do, my hunch is that you have pretty high personal standards for yourself. And that is a wonderful thing. And that is also, like many things, you know, greatest gift is also greatest injury. Because right now, perfection is not within your reach. And so for those of you who said, you know, I'm putting one foot in front of the other, I think that was 20% of you, yay, right? That is maybe as good as it's going to get today, and that's okay. That's okay. I hope that you can set your standards at a level where you're moving out of that 120% expectation, which is probably where most of you live, and ratchet it down. And if it's, you know, 60% of normal, that is good enough. So offer yourself grace and compassion. And then, you know, this idea about maintaining a positive attitude. I'm the kind of person that bristles a little bit when people talk about positive thinking, because I also believe in realistic thinking. However, I think we have to find the sweet spot there and really think about, okay, so I can run down the trail of awfulizing, okay? Or I can say, yes, these things may happen. These things are frightening. These things are hard. And what is the good? What is the good in my life today? You know, one of the things I do pretty much every day, I live near a creek. And I will tell you that before COVID, I walked to the creek maybe once a month. Since COVID, I have gone to that creek probably 5 times a week. And I'm grateful for that creek. Sometimes that's the most I can find in the morning to be grateful for, depending on the day, right? And so, but where are those places of gratitude for you? Where are those places where you can say, yes, things are hard and I still can do my job and I still can be good enough at my job. Yes, things are hard. I still got up this morning. Yes, things are hard. I'm healthy. Yes, things are hard. I still can reach out to people I love, and we'll talk more about that. So maintaining a positive attitude. And last but not least is being really aware of what triggers your anxiety and paying attention to it, okay? And here's the second pause spot. And I want to tell you a little story, and then I want to take you through a little bit of another kind of internal journey. So early on in COVID, what came to me clearly, as I was really at that point focused on my own kind of process and adjustment, was this, what I call the dance between grief and gratitude. And that really held me through a lot, because what happened to me early on, and again, I share this because I think sometimes it's just helpful for perspective. There was so much loss, what felt like so much loss to me. Loss. I have kids and grandkids on the West Coast. We've made a commitment, my husband and I, to see those grandkids really every 2 or 3 months. Gone. I love traveling. I love connecting with groups. I love driving change with groups. Being able to be face to face. Gone. I love flying. Gone. And at the same time, I was struggling with that grief and also feeling grateful for what I did have. I was reading a lot of people who were posting about, I'm learning a new language and I'm learning to make bread and I'm cleaning my house. And it was like I was gutting out every single day. And this went on for 2 or 3 months. So I share that because in the middle of that, I kept saying to myself, it's grief and gratitude. Joan, you have to honor both. In June, one of my dear friends from long ago, a seminary friend of my husband's and mine from 35 years ago in Philadelphia, who lived in Oregon, who had just retired. He is a spiritual director and had these great plans around retirement. They had a kind of spiritual direction center, lost everything in the Oregon fires. And Jeff has given me permission to share this story. And as Jeff shared his story on Facebook, one day he talked about this dynamic of grief and gratitude, and he shared the story about what is in front of you on this screen. And I want to just share it with you as we think about this as a way of thinking about perspective, because what he said was one of the few things that survived this fire was this ceramic container which sat in his office that had marbles in it. And the marbles in it represented grief and gratitude. And when he had a spiritual direction client, you know, if they were struggling with a particular grief, they would take a marble from the jar and take it with them to hold as they process their grief. Or if they were feeling particularly grateful, they would take a marble. And what he said about this jar is that for him, now grief and gratitude were forever melded together. And that has been so powerful for me. And again, images are really powerful for me, maybe for some of you as well. And so I share this with you, and I invite you just to take a moment, and if you have a piece of paper in front of you, to take, and I'll time this, I'm just going to take like a moment pause here, for you to write down, what is it that you're grieving today or this week? And what is it that you're grateful for? Or maybe one or the other. Maybe it's all on the gratitude side, or maybe it's on the grief side. So just take a minute and jot down 2 or 3 things that then you can come back to as a way of honoring and of creating perspective in your own life about this grief gratitude dynamic. Okay, and please feel free to come back to that. Again, I'm trying to give you a whole variety of strategies that you can come back to over time. I have a group of women friends that we committed early on to meet every Wednesday night at 6 o'clock on Zoom. And one of the things we talk about almost every week is what are we grateful for and what are we grieving? So honoring perspective, really important part of self-care and self-compassion. So as we move into thinking about body-mind strategies, I want us to think about this concept of mindfulness. And some of you may be really familiar with mindfulness. Some of this may be new to you, but I love this little video that just goes through the idea of mindfulness in a really accessible way, because I think sometimes it gets to be so complex in the explanations of it. So I hope this is going to work. We tested it out before. I'm always a little, speaking of anxiety, I'm always a little anxious about videos, but let's try this out. And I hope this is helpful.
There is a story, usually attributed to the Native American tradition, which illuminates different ways of paying attention. An elder, talking to a child, says, "I have 2 wolves fighting in my heart. One wolf is fearful, vengeful, envious, resentful, and deceitful. The other wolf is compassionate, loving, generous, truthful, and peaceful." The child asks, "Which wolf will win the fight?" The elder responds, "The one I feed." That doesn't mean we try to deny or hurt or kill the angry wolf. If we did that, we'd end up in a long battle, all the while somehow making that wolf more powerful through our hostility and fear. Hating that wolf sucks the strength right out of us. Instead, we calmly pay attention to the angry wolf and let go of believing they have the answers. If we can do that, they end up lying down next to us, no longer an enemy. We help strengthen the kind and loving wolf, giving it nourishment and support so that we can follow it. That peaceful wolf can become our steady companion, and show us the way through all kinds of different life experiences. Restful or chaotic, enjoyable or disappointing experiences may come and go, but we can have a guide with us through it all. This is what mindfulness can help you do. Mindfulness allows us to see our thoughts and feelings as they are beginning. It's very powerful to know what we're feeling as we're feeling it, know what we're thinking as we're thinking it. With mindfulness, we can choose what will strengthen and bring into action, and we can choose what we will gently let go of. We don't have to be at the mercy of old habits or old ways of thinking or old ways of being. We are empowered. It just takes practice.
So reflecting just for a moment with you on mindfulness, what I love about that is the, you know, in when we've already done 2 mindfulness activities. So the first one was standing by the lake. The second one was that activity I just asked you about in terms of grief and gratitude. So it's not that we beat ourselves up for being angry or frustrated or cranky or irritable or whatever. We notice it, we acknowledge it, we offer ourselves compassion about it. We recognize that just some days that's just the way it is, and we choose how to act or not how to act on it, and what to do in terms of how to help ourselves get to a better space. And breathing is man, that's the, you know, my number one go-to, because you can do it anywhere, anytime, for any amount of time. So, but there are also other strategies. So thinking again, I mentioned alcohol use, you know, really paying attention to how, you know, I'm not saying you can't have a glass of wine with dinner. I'm not like anti-alcohol in that way, but really paying attention to how alcohol affects your mood, because alcohol and caffeine, you know, alcohol can take the edge off, but it can also trigger some rebound anxiety in some people. So we really want to pay attention to that. Caffeine, for sure. When you're struggling with anxiety, you know, it may not be wise to have that second cup of coffee. You may want to switch to decaf. And then really making sure that you drink enough water, because water actually helps calm the body. Paying attention to what kind of food, you know, it's interesting. There was an article again this morning in the New York Times about the increased, you know, people's weight is increasing, the increased consumption of junk foods. And so again, you got to find a balance there, right? But really paying attention to those fruits and vegetables, and really paying attention to the impact of what you eat on how you feel. Sleep is a really key issue. And so I think, you know, this isn't a time, recognizing that lots of people are struggling with sleep. This isn't a time to short yourself on the number of hours in bed, even if you aren't sleeping for all of those hours, to not short yourself on those. And then finally, I can't stress enough the role of exercise. And when I think about exercise, I'm talking about any kind of movement with your body. You know, preferably outside. I think lots and lots of people that I talk to have found that they've really needed to increase their activity level in order to burn off that anxiety. There is no better treatment for anxiety than getting out and going for a walk. Absolutely, hands down, best treatment there is. And then breath, and we've talked about that a little bit. So I just want to give you 2 other strategies. So we've done a guided imagery activity already. You know, some people are wired so that meditation, mindfulness, you know, taking 20 minutes and just focusing on breath and meditating is easy. Other people have a really tough time with that. I do really well if I have someone guiding me through that kind of activity. I don't do so well like in my own doing it by myself, or I really do well meditating while I'm walking. We all have to find a different way to do that. So I want to give you a couple other ways to use breath that you may be familiar with or maybe not. And the purpose of both of these activities is to help you or someone you love potentially focus on breath. Okay, So the first one is called 4-7-8 breathing. There are variations on this. This is called circle breathing. There's square breathing, which is 4-4-4-4. So there's lots of different options online, but I'm just going to talk you through this one and just would ask you to try it out just for a few breaths, just so you begin to get the idea so that you've practiced the skill and can use it. And it's actually very simple. I'll count it out for you. You breathe into the count of 4, you hold your breath to the count of 7, and breathe out to the count of 8. And what that does, first of all, anytime we take control of our breathing, it calms our brain, number one. And this one automatically lengthens the exhale, which again helps to stimulate that vagus nerve as we inhale and exhale in a kind of rhythmic kind of way, which again calms us. So I'll count it out. So if you could breathe in, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, breathe out, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, breathe in, 2, 3, 4, hold, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, breathe out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. One more, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, breathe out, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The whole point of the counting also is to give you a way to focus and to help you stay focused on the breath, which again, this is another form of mindfulness. The other one I'll teach you, and again, we'll just do this through a couple cycles just to give you the idea, is to alternate nose, mouth, and nose breathing. Okay, so again, we breathe in through the nose on a few cycles and then switch to the mouth or vice versa. I'm going to start you with the mouth. And so all you do is just breathe in normally through the mouth. And so I'll coach you. Breathe in through your mouth and breathe out through your mouth. Breathe in through the mouth. Breathe out through the mouth. Breathe in through the mouth and breathe out through your nose. Breathe in through your nose and breathe out through your nose. Breathe in through your nose and breathe out through your mouth. So again, just two very simple strategies you can use anywhere that again will help to restore some semblance of inner calmness and breath. You know, I used to early on in my nursing career, I worked in a surgical intensive care unit in Center City, Philadelphia for 5 years, and pretty high stress place. And there would be nights when the only option for sort of regrounding myself after a particularly stressful experience was I would just go in the bathroom and use one of these strategies for just a couple minutes, just like 2 minutes, and it would just bring my level down, reground me and help me be able to focus and to think. And then the other recommendation here I would just say in terms of, again, body mind strategies is there are just tons of online meditation guides. If you can go to YouTube and say meditation for sleep, and 100 different apps will come up. Free apps. There are apps you can use on your phone. Calm is one lots of people use. You have to pay for it. But there are also free meditation apps. There's an app called a meditation timer that you can set to go off several times a day to remind you to breathe. So, lots of resources out there that you can use to support this process. And all of this is designed really to build your resilience, to help you adapt, to increase your ability to adapt well to stress and adversity, or trauma or tragedy. And again, you know, most of you probably had pretty good skills before, but you need to step them up because there's greater stress. And that really involves the things we've been talking about. It involves self-awareness. It involves connecting. It involves taking personal responsibility and really monitoring, how am I feeling right now? And again, I would say monitoring how I am feeling right now from a place of compassion. So right now I'm feeling sad. Right now I'm feeling angry. When I feel sad, what helps me? Will breathing help you? Do you need to get outside? Do you need to have a cup of herbal tea? Do you need to go in a quiet corner and cry? What are those things? So that all helps with resilience. So some other ways to relieve stress and anxiety, and I would be really thrilled to have any of you who are interested, you know, to put into the question box what you found if it's not on this list, because again, I think learning from each other is really helpful. I'm going to just pick on a few of these. We've talked a little bit about exercise. You know, writing things down, really, really helpful in terms of what you're experiencing, what you're learning, what you want to take forward when we find whatever the next new normal is. Really paying attention to your personal boundaries in terms of learning to say no. You may before have been able to handle all sorts of things, and now you find what you can handle is less. It's okay to say no. It's okay to set boundaries. Certainly not beyond, I mean, sorry, speak, Joan, beyond okay. You need to be able to walk away from that computer, to say it's the end of the workday. I'm going to walk away. I've learned to close my office door because it physically signals to me the workday is over. I'm in a different world. So really looking at kind of boundaries and overall effort expected to be expended and figuring out kind of what you need. Doing the next right thing. Again, you know, I mentioned the challenges people are having with focusing, with thinking. And so one of my mantras is Joan, just do the next right thing. So you have a huge project, you're overwhelmed, you don't know where to begin. What's one small thing? What's the right thing? What's the next step you can take? Really breaking that up. Somebody said cooking. Yeah, I totally agree. Cooking helps a lot, right? You get to do something with your hands. It's something tangible. There's actually a product at the end. A lot of people have kind of rediscovered their kitchen, right? Cooking, my favorite food. Another really important principle, and I've talked about, you know, walking as managing anxiety. There is a whole body of research around the power of being outside. Now, some of you may live in urban environments and say, well, there's no park near me. It doesn't matter. If you can get outside and look at a plant that's sitting, you know, on the sidewalk, at a tree, something about that, our brains are wired in a way that calms us down. And so I would really encourage you, you know, when you're feeling really overwhelmed, even though it's cold, you know, put on your jacket, put on your hat, put on your gloves, scarf, get outside, even if it's only for 3 to 5 minutes. And another key piece of this that I just learned actually last week is there's also another body of literature that says, particularly being near water, which is so interesting to me because intuitively I have just craved being near bodies of water over the last 10 months. I've always loved water, but apparently being near water, so a creek, a stream, you know, a river, a lake, the ocean, whatever's near you, and if all else fails, it works to fill your bathtub and look at water and get in that bathtub. So really important there. And somebody else said gardening, again, another really important thing. You know, there's yoga online. There was another article in the New York Times last week about Adriene. I don't know if any of you found yoga with Adriene online, but whoa, I can't tell you how many people I know who are doing yoga with Adriene, right? It's right online. You can do it in the privacy of your own home. So if you fall over, you don't have anybody to laugh at you. Practicing mindfulness, laughing. Finding, you know, if all else fails, watch something funny on Netflix or Amazon Prime or YouTube, you know, pull out those old those old comedy movies, those old holiday movies, whatever it is that will bring you laughter and bring you joy. So again, just some ideas there. And I think I said this, but somebody else said gardening, another key strategy. Anything else that is working for you that you can pop here into the chat box. I think I got everything that's in there now. Yes. The first one that came in, I missed. Limiting social media and news. Really, really key. You know, when I talked about kind of that external noise, that external world, limiting that, you know, disconnecting from the phone, disconnecting from the computer, disconnecting from having, you know, Fox or CNN or MSNBC, whatever medium you use on all the time. The world will not stop turning in its axis if you don't pay attention for a few minutes. So really important. Anything else? I just want to see if there's other ideas from people that are coming in here. Gardening, social media, prayer. Yeah, prayer, spiritual practice, whatever that is. Praying, limiting. Again, we got another one. We got someone here who sews. Oh, these are great. Doing puzzles, absolutely. Doing puzzles, playing games with whoever you're kind of quarantined with, coloring. So let me just say a couple things about this. If you think about what we're hearing from people, almost all of these things are tangible, they're touchable. I know prayer is not tangible, but prayer has that incredible power of focusing us and helping us, you know, tune into something outside ourselves, to feel it's a way of connecting when we're praying for other people or meditating for other people. It's a way of connecting us, really important. And then connecting with our loved ones. And again, you know, for all of us are part of all sorts of social networks and connected networks. And we have work colleagues that we love. We have, you know, the grocery store clerk, or, you know, people at our faith communities that we love. We have family, we have extended family, we have friends. And one of the real challenges for I think everyone is the increasing need to be physically distant from each other. And I would also say some of the conflicts about, you know, being physically distant from each other. Those of you who have bubble families, you know, we have a bubble with our middle daughter and her husband who live about 45 minutes away, but we have almost a written contract about what we will and won't do so that we can keep each other safe, right? But that still means there are all sorts of people that I'm not seeing, and that's true for all of us. And so recognizing that even though we need to be physically distant, we have to find ways to be socially connected. And it is a challenge for those of you, and I think this is true for all of you, that you're having to do a lot of work online. So you're on Zoom or GoToWebinar or GoToMeeting or, you know, Duo or FaceTime or WhatsApp, you know, all of those mediums who bring us face to face with each other, and they're exhausting. And the temptation is when you're done with work to say, I am not doing one more Zoom call. That's fine, but find some way to connect with those you love. You know, identify kind of who is most important to you, who, you know, out of your myriad of people, who do you want to stay, is it most important to you to stay connected with? Prioritize those, potentially set up a regular connection time. And then with others around the edges, you know, I have some people who I connect with every 2 or 3 months. You know, we'll set up a Zoom on the weekend and just have a conversation. And then, you know, our immediate family, my kids and grandkids, we have a standing Sunday 11:30 call. And even if it's only half an hour, we see each other, we talk to each other. It's the last thing I want to do some weeks because the thought of getting on Zoom makes me want to cry, but it's really important. So figuring out how can you connect, and then thinking about some other strategies. And again, some of you may have developed some pretty innovative kinds of strategies around connection. So feel free to drop those into the question box. But I think, an email, or dropping with a socially distant way, dropping something off at a friend's house. I know we got a little package from church this week in preparation for our Christmas Eve service. It had 2 candles and some special pecans. I mean, like, I felt like I'd been given $1 million, honestly. It just felt like such an expression of care. Sending notes, writing a handwritten note, which I know most of us, like, that's not been part of our lives. That's really powerful. Right now, getting a letter in the mail, getting a card in the mail, that feels really good. And for people in your life, even thinking about your grandchildren, for those of you who have grandchildren, or those of you, who have aunts or uncles who may be distant, think about handwritten notes. And then for those of you who are caring for others, and maybe need to be socially distant at this time. I have several friends who have parents or loved ones in long-term care communities. Thinking about how can you keep them safe? So making sure that you're aware of what's going on with them physically. If they're living on their own, that they have what they need, helping them figure out how to get those groceries delivered if they're, so that they don't need to go out. I'm thinking particularly here of older folks. And at the same time, taking care of your own emotional health. It's hard. It's hard not to be able to see the older people in your life who you may be responsible for. And so what again, how in the overall balance of things, how do you manage that? And I want to just say a special word here about the holidays. And if you noticed in the I don't know what you call that thing on the side of your computer screen, there is a handout here called Self-Compassion Strategies for the Holidays. One of my colleagues put this together, and feel free, this is in the public domain, feel free to share it if it's helpful. I've shared it all over the place with my family and with my friends, because I think it's really helpful, because the holidays are inherently stressful. In the best of times, they're stressful, and these are not the best of times. And so many of us, all of us, are facing very different holidays. If for those people who are choosing to continue with normal holiday traditions and large gatherings, that brings, an added layer of stress this year, because you really don't know who might be exposing whom and what might happen in the weeks after the holiday. So there's that kind of stress. For those of us who are going to have very different holidays, maybe not the same traditions, thinking about, what perspective can we bring? What is enough? Thinking about everything we've talked about as we move into the holidays. What's enough? What's good enough? It doesn't have to be perfect. It's not going to be perfect. You may not have the energy to go forward. I'm the queen of Christmas, and I've said to my one daughter who will be here on Christmas, yeah, stockings aren't going to be like they normally are. They're a big thing for me, not this year. How can we create meaning in small ways? What are the things we can do that still bring meaning here? And then how can we connect with those that we normally would be with if we're not able to be physically connected to them? What do we need to do? One of the people I work with, has already planned, she and her partner are going to be in their little tiny apartment in Washington, D.C. She's not going to be with her family on the West Coast, so they're going to have the same meal she would have had with her family, spend the day together cooking. So what is it for you? And there are lots of tips in that handout, but above all, be kind and compassionate to yourself and to others, and know that there will be a better holiday. Finally, I'd like to just give you 4 final tips. I know I've given you lots and lots of information, and please be ready, because I would love to have some conversation with you for a few minutes here. I know we can't talk to each other, but feel free to pop things in the chat box if you have questions. So I've just begun reading a book by Vivek Murthy, who I've been following his work for several years, because he's done a tremendous amount of work in the area of loneliness and the impact of loneliness on our physical health. And he just in April published a book called Together, The Healing Power of Human Connection in a Sometimes Lonely World. And if you recognize his name, it's because he was the Surgeon General during the Obama administration and will assume that role again in the Biden administration. But he opens in his preface, you know, he had written the book and then COVID hit, and in his preface, he talks about that and talks about, you know, our sort of what's this done to us in terms of our connections. And he gives these 4 really concrete tips that I think really sum up what I've been trying to say. So spending time each day with people you love, at least 15 minutes a day. And that could be face-to-face if you're, you know, if you're living with others, or if not, then through some other mechanism. During that time, focus on each other, not on your phones, not on what's going on in your brain. Give each other that full attention. I love this one because I think, you know, sometimes when we think about managing our stress, we miss this one, this idea of embracing solitude. You know, and all of us have more solitude than we've probably ever had in our life. Well, we have more alone time. He's talking about embracing solitude in the way that we talked about it early on, in terms of connecting with yourself, tuning into what is happening in that internal landscape, building that connection with yourself, really understanding yourself, allowing yourself compassion. And then last but not least, and I love this, help and be helped, right? And so again, we may not physically be able to help someone else, but how can you reach out to, at least once in a while? Can't do this every day. You may not have the energy or the bandwidth every day. That's okay. How can you reach out to others and a hand to someone else who may be lonelier than you are? So we've given you some resources here, and I just would love to have some time here for questions, comments, anything you want to clarify that we've talked about. And Tara, if
Joan,
stuff
it's
is,
Tara.
yeah, go ahead. I was going to say, if stuff is there, feel free to talk to me.
I don't see anything additional at the moment.
Okay. I'll just wait one more minute in case people are kind of getting their thoughts together. While we're
And
waiting.
Joan, would you be okay if I distributed your email address to people if they have any additional questions after?
Absolutely, absolutely. Feel free to do that. And we didn't talk about this, Tara, but I'm fine also if you want to distribute the slides.
Okay. Mostly people are saying this has been very helpful. We really enjoyed listening to you and everything that you brought forth for us. Actually, everybody's saying thank you so much for all the helpful information. It's the same thing over and over again, Joan, and AFSA really does appreciate you speaking with us. I mean, everybody's commenting the same thing. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I took lots of notes, and I feel like you understand very useful tools and techniques. And for all of the AFSA members on the call, we will have this available in the newsletter that goes out tomorrow and on the website. Everybody appreciates your views. Thank you very much. Merry Christmas. It's just the same sentiment over and over again, Joan. I mean, it really is. Very thankful for you speaking with us and taking the time and really bringing all these tools and information to us. Somebody said you made my day.
Well, I just want to say you all have made my day as well, because I view what you do. My mother died in a nursing home, and I view what you do as really, really important. Sorry, guys. So I just want to thank you for the privilege of sharing this time with you, and hopefully, and I'm really glad this was helpful, because I really think I want to honor the work you do. I know you're sort of the unsung heroes of the world, and you probably feel like the bad guys most of the time, but what you do is really, really important, especially right now. So all the best, and please find joy in this very strange holiday season that we all are encountering. So thank you. And thank you, Tara, for asking. I really, really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, Joan. Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.